What's going on, guys? In this video I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to capture sharp images using a photography technique called panning. Now before we even shoot this image, we need to get dialed in. So the first tip I'm going to give you guys is get dialed in. Now how this technique works is by dragging the shutter or using a low shutter speed. So the first step is using the technique is to make sure that you set up your shutter speed between 140 1/30th of a second. I did find myself using 1/40th of a second for most of the majority of these images that you see here. This will give you enough motion blur for the image, so you can totally play between 1/30th of a second, 1/40th of a second. If you want to get fancy, you can go lower than that, but definitely 130 to 140 makes sense to me. The second step to dialing in to capture this type of images is messing with your aperture. Now because we're using a low shutter speed, this also means more light is coming into the camera, so I find myself dialed in at f2.8 so I can get the subject more in focus. But don't worry, the shutter speed we dialed in will give you dimension to the background and of the image, and it won't feel flat. Now the third step for getting dialed in is dealing with your ISO. And since my aperture is dialed in at 7.1 and my shutter speed is already at 1/40th of a second, my ISO didn't have to be so high because there's already enough light coming into the camera. So I played around 64 to 200 ISO and it ended up actually being at 200 ISO. Very last camera setup to dialing in here is changing from single shooting mode to burst mode. Now you're going to need to use this setting so you can land focus on your images, especially when you're dealing with, vehicles, motorcycles, mopeds, and all that craziness. Definitely you want to try to land as much shots as possible, so going into burst mode makes total sense. Now you can get fancy and try to shoot like one shot and make sure you land it, but it's better off to stay safe going into burst mode and make sure that you're capturing that one shot that you want. Okay, so now we're all dialed in. The next tip I'm going to give you guys is pay attention to your background. What I noticed that even though you're getting that motion blur with that low shutter speed in the background, make sure that your background has contrast or something other than the sky background. You don't want to blow out your highlights. So try to make sure that you're using something like a building or trees in the background or something that's contrast, that it's not the sky. Very last tip I want to give you guys, and it's super major key, and that's to make sure that you're following your subject, especially with moving vehicles, cars, motorcycles, whatever the case may be. Make sure that you're locked on the target and pan with the actual vehicle, which hence is panning. Time it nicely and just burst mode the crap out of this thing and make sure you grab it in focus. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to try out yourselves and tag me on Instagram at Luciano. We'd love to see what you guys come up with. Also, let me know in the comments below if this is something that you actually tried before. What are some of the issues that you had with? Did you nail your shots? Did you have problems with your shutter speed and all that? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get the conversation going. Until next time, stay awesome, stay fresh, keep creating. Peace.